The hardwood under my shoes felt colder than I remembered. I sat down at the defendant's table, eyes following me from every direction, some curious, some hungry for the spectacle they thought was about to happen. Judge Halverson leaned forward, lips curling, ready for your comedy act. A ripple of laughter spread through the room. A couple of jurors looked down like they weren't supposed to laugh but couldn't help themselves. My pulse thudded in my ears. I kept my voice flat. I'm here for the truth, not entertainment. The laughter died fast. Halverson's eyebrows arched like I'd stepped out of place already. We'll see, he said, and nodded to Voss. Prosecutor Voss straightened his tie like he was about to sell a house, not strip a man bare. Mr. Reed, you were let go from your position at Fairmont Enterprises. Multiple reports describe you as, how was it phrased, unfit for corporate culture. He let that hang in the air. Would you agree with that assessment? I looked at him and said nothing. Voss smirked. Cat got your tongue, or are you just planning to stall for sympathy? Jordan's chair creaked beside me. Objection argumentative and irrelevant. Overruled, Halverson said without missing a beat, the smirk back on his face. The sound of that smirk, I'd heard it before. Not in court, but in conference rooms where my ideas got laughed off until someone paler repeated them. I remembered every joke about my voice being too street for clients. Every time I was told to smile more so I wouldn't look intimidating. I didn't know it then, but those were the training wheels for this moment. Voss, they leaned on the podium. Let's try again. Would you say you fit corporate culture? My throat burned, but my voice came out steady. If by culture you mean silence in the face of prejudice. No, the words landed heavier than I expected. I caught a few spectators trading looks. Voss adjusted his glasses, the fake politeness draining from his face. So you admit you couldn't adapt? Jordan's whisper slid in under the noise. Stay calm. This isn't the hill, they'll dig their own hole. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I could feel Halverson's grin from across the bench, waiting for me to snap, to play the part he'd already written for me. I didn't give him the satisfaction. Inside, though, the words formed on their own. You want a comedy act? Wait. The air shifted before the doors even opened. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoed down the aisle, each one pulling the room's attention away from me. I looked up. Jordan leaned in without taking her eyes off the man walking in. That's Elias Grant. My brow pulled tight. You're kidding. She shook her head, her voice low but sharp. He's here for you. I didn't have time to respond before Judge Halverson cleared his throat. Mr. Grant, unexpected. Elias didn't glance around like most people do when all eyes are on them. He stopped just behind me and said, not for me. I came for Mr. Reed. The sound of collective gasps washed over my shoulders like heat. I caught Voss's head jerk up, his lips parting before his voice snapped. This is highly irregular. Elias turned to him with the kind of calm that cuts deeper than shouting. So is mocking defendants. Counselor. The words hung there. Judge Halverson's smirk faltered, just enough for me to notice. I could almost hear the robe weighing heavier on him. The judge tried to recover. You intend to testify? Yes, Elias said, sliding a black folder from under his arm. And you'll want to see this before another joke leaves your mouth. Jordan's pen froze over her notepad, eyes locked on the folder like it was a live grenade. Voss shifted, jaw tightening. What exactly is that? Elias didn't even look at him. He set the folder down in front of me with a soft thud that it still felt louder than the gavel. Proof, he said, his voice low but meant for everyone to hear, of exactly what's been going on here and in your so-called corporate culture. I didn't touch it. My hands stayed clasped, but inside, my pulse was pounding hard enough to shake the table. Voss's voice tried for authority but cracked just slightly. We object to. You can object all you want, Elias cut in, but by the end of today, this room will know who's really on trial. The silence after that wasn't empty, it was loaded, and for the first time since I sat down this morning, I felt the weight shift in my direction. The clerk swore him in, and the room felt like it had swallowed its own breath. Elias sat down, adjusted the microphone. This isn't just a lawsuit, he said, his voice steady, low. It's a pattern. Voss rolled his eyes. Your Honor, save it. Elias cut in, flipping open the black folder. Let's start with this. 1, he read, slow enough for every syllable to sting. Too urban for leadership. A ripple of gasps rolled through the benches behind me. My skin prickled. That phrase had sat in my memory like a splinter for years. But hearing it out loud in this room, it hit like glass breaking on tile. Voss shot up. Your Honor, these are confidential. They're evidence, Elias said, not even looking at him. And they show exactly why Mr. Reed is here. Judge Halverson didn't meet my eyes. He didn't meet anyone's. His gaze sank toward his notes like they might shield him. The HR rep was called, next a short woman in a neat blazer, her knuckles white around the oath card. Voss softened his tone, the fake kind of friendly. You've been with the company 15 years. Yes, and you've always acted in the company's best interest. Yes, Jordan stood. Did you forward this email? She held up a printout of the same too urban line to Mr. Elias Grant. Silence. The rep's lips trembled. Yes, Voss tried to pounce. So you admit to breaching? Elias's voice sliced across him. She admits to doing the only decent thing in a room full of cowards. My throat tightened. I gripped the edge of the table. She, Elias went on, looking right at the HR rep, was the only one brave enough to risk her job so the truth could breathe. The judge cleared his throat, voice catching just slightly. Objection overruled. That tiny crack in his tone felt like the first chip in a wall I'd been staring at my whole life. I could feel the years of boardroom smirks, the closed laughs, the way people's voices changed when they spoke to me, all of it sliding off my shoulders, inch by inch. But my hands still shook under the table. Elias closed the folder with a firm clap. This court needed the truth, he said, turning toward the judge. Now it has it. For the first time since this began, the silence in the room wasn't about me being on trial. It was about them, Mr. Reed, the judge said, his voice flatter than it had been all week. You may speak. I stood slowly. My knees didn't shake this time. I wasn't planning to, I said, letting the words settle in the air. But I will. I turned toward Jordan first. Thank you for standing when it would have been easier to sit. Then, to Elias, thank you for showing up when no one expected you to. My eyes found the HR rep in the second row, and thank you for risking everything to send one email. Finally, I looked at the bench. Judge Helverson ready for my comedy act now. The room froze. The same people who'd laughed before were staring at the floor now. My dignity, I said, my voice sharper than I intended, was never yours to hand out or laugh away. And the truth, you can't give it, you can't take it. It just is. No one moved, no coughs, no paper, shuffling, just silence thick enough to hold in my hands. Elias stepped into the aisle, waiting for me. As we reached the back of the room, he gripped my hand. It's over, he said quietly. I looked past him at the rows of faces still pretending not to watch me. Not for them. The doors swung open. Sunlight spilled in, warm on my face. My shoulders drew back without me telling them to. I walked out taller than I came in. The phone buzzed across my kitchen counter, unknown number. I almost let it ring out until I heard the voice. Marcus, it's Richard. Every muscle in my jaw locked. I hadn't heard that voice since the day security walked me out with a cardboard box. I think, he began, syrup in his tone. We can put this behind us, funny, I said, leaning on the counter. You put me behind you years ago. A pause. That was never my intention. Things got misinterpreted. I let out a dry laugh. Misinterpreted. Richard, you built a culture where people could laugh at me in a courtroom and think they were safe doing it. He cleared his throat. You're making this personal. It was personal, every single day. Silence. I pictured him, in some quiet office stripped of his nameplate. Finally realizing how quickly the tide had turned. I just thought he tried again. You thought wrong. I straightened up. The one you fired now decides your severance. Package, consider it 0. From across the table, Elias raised an eyebrow, clearly overhearing. Offer him his own chair, he mouthed, half smiling. I didn't bother. I ended the call. The quiet afterward felt heavier than his voice ever had. Elias leaned back. You know, he said, we could use someone like you, not as charity. No, but because you fought harder for the truth than most executives I've met. I studied his face. He meant it. What's the title? Whatever makes people nervous, he said, grinning. Jordan, sitting at the counter, smirked. You're really gonna take it? I looked out the window. For the first time in years, the city didn't look like it was closing in on me. Yeah, I said, but only if my chair has my name on it. Flashbulbs snapped in quick bursts, each one a tiny explosion against my eyes. My name echoed from the speakers as Elias stepped aside, letting me take my place at the podium. Marcus Reed, he said, our new director of diversity and equity. Applause rolled through the room. A polite wave I barely felt over the thud in my chest. I gripped the edges of the podium not to steady myself, but to ground myself in the moment. This wasn't just a title, it was a reclamation. From the back of the conference hall, the door clicked open. The sound was small, but my ears caught it like a gunshot. I glanced up and there he was. Richard. He froze for half a breath when our eyes met, just long enough for the recognition to cut through whatever script he'd been rehearsing. A former CEO now walking in for a job interview. In my building, under my nameplate, I stepped down from the podium before the applause faded. The reporters were still shouting questions, but my focus tunneled to the man in the doorway. His suit was crisp, but the confidence in his shoulders sagged. You here for the interview? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. His mouth opened, then closed again. Yes. I picked up a glass from the refreshment table, filled it halfway, and held it out. Water. He took it, fingers brushing mine cold damp. I leaned in just enough so only he could hear. The one you fired, I said, signs your paycheck now. The glass trembled in his hand. He didn't look up. Couldn't around us. The room had gone still, conversations tapering off into the kind of silence you can feel press against your skin. Somewhere, a camera shutter clicked slow, deliberate. Ilias's voice broke the pause. Shall we continue? He asked the reporters, but his eyes were on me, his mouth tugging at a half smile. I stepped back, letting Richard move past me. He avoided my gaze, like the space between us was too sharp to cross. As I returned to the podium, I felt the weight of the moment, but not the satisfaction I'd expected. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge burns hot and fast, but it leaves you hollow. This was something else. It was restoration, the quiet rebuilding of what someone tried to strip away. The knowledge that my dignity had never been theirs to give or take. I looked out over the sea of cameras, pens scratching heads, bent forward to catch every word. My voice was steady when I said, "Let's get to work."